Hello from Sugar and Spice.
Yes, winter is on its way, Shrija.
Lovely weather.
Yeah, and it's a lovely, lovely time to listen to stories, and that's what we are here for. So grab your steaming cup of coffee and sit back. Shrija goes first with her lovely story. Yes, Shrija, over to you.
Alright, so today both of us have decided that after the last session of folk tales from India, we'll go international this time. So here goes. I have an Italian story for you today, and this one is a very well known novel actually. The name is Vendetta by Marie Corelli, but I plan to give it to you in a short story form. I'll compress the story and give it to you with the hopes that you find time to grab a copy and read the book. It's beautiful, and the details are absolutely fascinating. So I know Deepthi is going to do it very soon because
sure.
I haven't told her the story as yet. And here goes. It starts with Fabio Romani, who is from the Italian aristocracy, and he starts off by saying that I am legally dead. So, as far as people are concerned, I am no longer alive, but I am very much alive. I am safe in the forests of South America. There's peace and calm around me. No one can touch me. I'm safe here. But the story that I'm going to share with you haunts me even today. So that's how he starts with this very interesting tale, the story of infidelity. So Fabio Romani says that he belonged to, of course, the Italian aristocracy, and he lived in this beautiful villa, marble villa atop a hill. It overlooked the Bay of Naples, and he was a man who had everything that he wanted. He was extremely good looking, very talented, soft hearted. His servants and his staff loved him. He was a very well known person in the society and somebody who contributed to charity and a very nice gentleman and of one of the most eligible bachelors of Naples. But he shunned female society. So he felt that he was not good with them. He was shy and he felt that most of the women he met wanted to marry him for his money. So he shied away from these. A lot of mothers were after him, but he didn't want to get married. And the one person he really loved with his heart was his friend, a poor artist who went by the name Guido Ferrari. And Guido Ferrari he called him his brother, yes, his soul brother. And he used to spend a lot of time with this gentleman in his house. And he did a lot for him. He bought his paintings, he sponsored him, and he loved him as a brother would. Of course, Guido was a man with a lot of material tastes. He loved women, he loved his wine, and he would always tease his friend and tell him, "What's wrong with you? You should get a woman for yourself or get married. I mean, it's the best thing to do." And they would laugh over the topic, but Fabio would always tell him, "No, I'm not interested. You enjoy as much as you want. I think I prefer to be a bachelor." But all this changed when it was a month when they had all the holy processions happening in Naples. There was one procession, and while Fabio watched it with his friend, one face came to mind. Now, the author describes this face with such eloquence, I feel I can't do justice to it. So I'll just read out this little paragraph. Yes, Preeti. So he says that, now let me see. Yeah, here goes. One face beaming out like a star from a cloud of amber tresses. One face of rose tinted, childlike loveliness. A loveliness absolutely perfect, lit up by two luminous eyes, large and black as night. One face in which the small curved mouth smiled half provokingly, half sweetly. I gazed and gazed again, dazzled and excited. Beauty makes such fools of us all. Of course, he goes on to describe her looks further, but he falls in love with this girl, a girl of 15 or 16, the daughter of a nobleman who had lost all his money to gambling. And Fabio, without any facing too many difficulties, marries this lovely girl, Nina, who comes as a bride into his life and lights up his life. They go on to have a little daughter, Stella, and everything seems just perfect. Fabio feels nothing can ever go wrong in his life, and his brother, his friend, Guido, is a frequent visitor and loves Nina as a brother would. They share very happy moments together, and everything goes on fine until the notorious plague, the cholera that hit Naples in 1884. In fact, I'd like to mention at this point that this story was based on a real life occurrence, which makes it all the more interesting. To get back to my story. So, cholera did strike Naples, wiped out a lot of people died. And what happens is when when Fabio happens to go down into the city once when this cholera was actually doing its round, he gets infected by the illness. He doesn't realize it, he falls dizzy, and there is a monk who is there at the time and helps him out, tries to get him get better, but nothing happens. He falls into a deep coma. And the story goes that one fine day, Fabio wakes up in pitch black darkness. He doesn't know where he is. He looks around, he can just feel something covering his, over his face, and he hits against it, keeps pounding in terror because he feels cold and clammy. He doesn't know where he is, and he somehow manages to break this thing which is above him, and he comes out. And in the shaft of sunlight, moonlight that comes in from a corner of the building that he is in, he realizes that he's in the vault, his family's vault, and that he has been buried alive. So he doesn't realize what has happened at first, but then he slowly thinks back and he comes to a realization that he had fainted. He had fallen into a deep state of unconsciousness but had actually recovered, and the cholera hadn't touched him. So at one point he's extremely happy that he can get back to his dear family, to his darling Nina and to his beloved daughter Stella and to his close friend Guido. But the other part is he doesn't know how to get out of this mausoleum, this vault, and he's terrified because he can see, his ancestors' remains around, and there are coffins. There's a very big description that goes on here where they talk about the worms that he has to throw off, because there are maggots all over the place. And finally, in his terror, when he's running around trying to get out, he comes across a coffin which is rotten and kind of breaks open, and he discovers a huge treasure inside it. He realizes that this is one of the legendary treasures that people had talked about. A pirate who used to come to the Bay of Naples was said to have hidden his treasure somewhere around here. People knew for a fact, but no one found it. And he realized that his family crypt had been used for the same. So anyway, the story goes that he gets out. So he comes out and he walks his way home. He still can't believe his luck that God has given him a second life. And when he goes, he realizes that his clothes are all torn and, rotten. He was in a coffin after all. And then he doesn't know how many days he's been in there. And he goes to a second-hand shop to get a few clothes for himself, because he had taken a little bit of he had found coins as well in the treasure that he had discovered. And when he goes to change, he goes to buy clothes. The man looks at him and says, sir, what? He talks to him like he was an old man. And Fabio didn't understand why until he looked at himself in the mirror and he realized that his entire shock of black curly hair had turned a pristine white. So he didn't know if it had happened because of the shock, if what had happened to him, or if it was illness. But apart from his blazing eyes, which was a giveaway as to who he was unrecognizable. Anyway, he gets his change of clothes. He goes home and he goes via the back orchard because he didn't want to upset his gentle Nina. She may pass out if she knew that her husband has come back literally from the grave. So when he goes, he hears laughter in the orchard outside, and he was a little surprised because he had found out from the man, the second-hand dealer, that it was about a couple of days since his death, not very long, and he wondered if Nina could laugh this quickly. But anyway, he says maybe he hears his friend Guido's voice as well, so he must have thought, he realized that okay, Guido must be comforting her, and he still went ahead to meet his wife, but he stopped in a state of shock because what he saw caught him unawares. He saw his wife in the hands, in the arms of his friend, and they were making love. And that's when he realized that, he stood there for a minute. He didn't believe what he saw at first. And then he realized they're kissing passionately. And he knew that this was not a relationship that Guido had spoken to him about. A deep sense of anger surged through him. The first reaction was, should I kill him in my home with my wife, his friend who he considered his brother? But then something told him no, that would be too easy a punishment for this man who's been, literally living in my house. And he goes back. The story goes that he takes some of the treasure from his crypt. He travels all the way to Palermo and he makes a different identity for himself. And after months of planning, he slowly gets back. He gets back as a very, very rich Conte Oliva. And he's already made a name for himself in the social circles, this news has reached before, so Naples is waiting for him, and he chooses a very, very flashy apartment which he furnishes with the best of riches, and he plans and goes to a cafe that he knew Guido always haunted. He always used to visit that particular place, and he sees him there, and he sees him smoking a cigar, and every time he lifts his hand to smoke the cigar, he finds a diamond sparkling on his finger, and he realizes with bitterness that the diamond belonged to him. So Nina had given it to him. Anyway, he befriends him, and he, as a part of his disguise, he didn't have to do anything about his hair because it was pure white. Nobody would recognize him. So he always wore thick glasses to cover his eyes because he knew his eyes were a giveaway. And his mannerisms he had worked on to change a bit. The story is very elaborate. Of course, I'm just cutting it down. Anyway, he meets his friend Guido, befriends him, and Guido falls for him immediately because he knows that he's a very rich man. People have been talking about him, and he says, you must come to visit the countess. She's a widow and she'd love to have you over. And Fabio tells him that, Fabio, who's now Oliver, tells him that he happens to be the friend of the late Fabio's father, and that he had come there to visit him, but now that both the father and the son are not there, he thinks he'll go back. But Guido says, no, you must come and visit. I'm sure she'll love to meet you. So he says, I'm not very fond of the company of women, but I have a gift of jewels which I had planned to give my old friend. But now that he's not there, I think his daughter-in-law can have it. Will you give it to her? So Guido says, yes, of course I will, and accepts it from his friend, who he doesn't know it's his friend, and takes it to Nina. And Nina is thrilled because these are some of the priceless jewels that had been retrieved from the crypt, and of course they had been polished and put into new settings. And when she thought Nina was a greedy woman, so she felt that this was a rich man she needed to cultivate. She had already she still had Guido worshipping at her feet to satisfy her lust, her company. So she was very, very interested in this rich gentleman, old he may be, but when she looked at the jewels, she fell for it. So she made it a point to meet him. Even though he didn't come home, she went all the way to Guido's artist studio, and met the Conte and invites him home. Of course, Fabio wanted to see his daughter. He had missed his little girl. And so when he went there, the only two people who recognize him in spite of his glasses are his dog and the daughter. And he finds that both of them are being really abused. The girl is totally neglected, left with the nanny. The nanny has only complaints about Nina, who's too caught up with her clothes and her furs and the time she spends with her lover, that she has no time for her daughter. And the dog is chained because the dog hates Guido, craves for the master. So when the dog sees Fabio, he runs to him, and this creates a little suspicion in Nina's mind because the dog never befriends anybody. But as it goes on, it is literally Nina who tries to seduce her husband, whom she doesn't recognize. She sees him as the old Oliver, and finally it comes to a point where jealousy starts stirring in Guido's breast. He realizes that he is no competition for this rich man, and in just to spite him, Oliver keeps giving very expensive gifts to his wife, and she's floored by it. And one fine day, it builds up slowly until one fine day, when Guido happens to be out of town, he proposes to Nina, and they get engaged. And he tells her, "Why don't you go to the convent and pray for a little while? Because I think your old friend may not like it when he comes to know that I am going to marry you." And Nina had one request she kept asking: "Take your glasses off. I want to see your face. I need to see the face of the man I love so much and I want to marry." And every time she talks to him, Fabio is always struck by her beauty. I mean, how can somebody with so much of beauty carry so much of venom? How can she be like this? Is something, and very often he had to stop himself from putting his hand out and holding her beautiful white neck and strangling her then and there. It was a lot of anger in him. But anyway, coming back to the story, Nina agrees and she goes to the convent. And when Guido Ferrari comes back and realizes that this old person, as far as he's concerned, is going to marry his love, because he really loved Nina. And he had told his friend, once when he had asked him, why are you still with his wife? Do you like her? He says, "Yes, I love her a lot." And he had also asked him, "But didn't you love your friend Fabio, who died like a brother?" "I loved him," Guido said, "until he got married. And that's when I realized that I wanted Nina and not him. That's when I started hating him, actually." So, and he was a very weak person. And he put his friend down to such an extent that Fabio wondered, was this a person he really knew? So, coming back to the story, when Guido comes to know that Fabio is going to marry Count Oliver is going to marry his love. In those days, they could call you out to fight unto death. He invites him over for a duel, and just before they have the duel, just the last minute when they were going to shoot, Count Oliver removes his spectacles and shows his face to him and tells him, "Do you know who I am?" And it's in that moment of shock he's unable to shoot right, and he takes a wrong aim and he gets killed by Fabio. And then Fabio comes back, the wedding happens. The wedding is a very grand affair, and he promises his wife he married a second time, tells, "I'll take my glasses off and show you my face on our wedding night." It's a promise. And so she's very happy. So once the ball is going on, the wedding dance is going on, he tells his wife, "Come, there's something I want to show you. It's a special place." And she says, "Is it something nice? Are they jewels again?" She says, Yes, come, I'll show you the place." And he takes her through different ways to the crypt, to the mausoleum. And when they reach there, Nina has a little sketch. "Where are you bringing me? Why are we going to this place? Which is this place?" She's not able to see it in the dark. But when she enters, when he carries her over the threshold inside, and she sees where she is, because he stuck candles in the holders, he says, "Why have you brought me to this crypt? I don't want to be here. I hate this place. Let's go out where there's fresh air." That's when he reveals himself. And he says, "Do you know me?" And she is shocked and she doesn't know how to react. She says, "This is madness. What is wrong with you? Why did you bring me here? Why did you marry me a second time?" And he expects her to confess. She confesses to a certain point, but she says, "No, I can't help it if I'm beautiful." So he says, "Does that give you the right to cheat on men?" "It doesn't. Guido loved me," she says, "but you got Guido killed." So she says, "No, you killed Guido." Fabio says, "No, I didn't. It was you. He loved you. You cheated on him. You cheated on me, and you cheated on him. And this is going to be your punishment. You're going to be here." She tries to kill him. She gets a sharp splinter from one of the coffins and tries in the last attempt to free herself, but she's unable to do it. And before Fabio can do anything, a boulder which was loose in the crypt dislodges itself and falls on her, and she's crushed to death. So the story ends there. But what is fascinating about this is the descriptions that are given. The descriptions are really wonderful. And the thing is, it ends with him leaving Naples and getting away from the whole thing. His revenge is accomplished. But at the end, he still says that "I am still haunted by an image of a hand that keeps beckoning to me." So the question is, the vendetta that he achieved, the revenge that he got, didn't really achieve its purpose. So the story ends there of Vendetta by Marie Corelli. You must read the book. Did you like it?
Excellent. Yes, I was almost watching a movie.
That's beautiful.
I'm
book.
sure I've seen few movies also, quite
Yes.
inspired.
By this
We
story,
could, yeah,
definitely. I'm
because-
sure. This is one of the
Yeah.
oldest, must be the original from
Yeah,
which the
true,
stories were
true.
taken.
And stories of revenge, right?
Yeah, always very interesting.
And very, very unexpected.
Yes,
turn of
a very,
events.
so maybe for
Very
those of you who'd
nice.
like to, this is the book,
Yes.
Vendetta. Grab a copy
Yes.
if you can. Yes.
Superb story,
So
Srija.
now we'll go to something from another country. This time I'll give you to Deepthi. Yes.
So my story is from Russia. It's a Russian short story by the famous author Anton Chekhov, and the name of the story is The Beggar. So the story begins where Skvortsov, a Petersburg lawyer, finds a beggar at his doorstep who is pleading to him, for some money. I've not had food for 5 days, sir. I can't find any lodging because I don't have any money to pay for it. So please help me with some money. I'm a village school teacher and I got out of my job because of some conspiracy which some people were doing, so I can't find any work as well. Please help me with some money. I just got an offer from the province of Kaluga, but even if I need to travel there, I don't have any money with me for that. So please do help. Skvortsov was a very kind-hearted man, but he looked at the beggar carefully, especially at his shoes. There was something weird about it, and suddenly remembered, this man, I have seen him somewhere. He looks familiar. Oh yes, last week I saw you, and you introduced yourself as not a village school teacher, but a student who was expelled. Remember? The beggar was taken aback and he did not know what to say. He defended himself for some time, but finally he agreed. Yes. So you were lying, right? You were taking advantage of the sympathy people have in their minds for students or school teachers. That's very bad. Why can't you do something useful, Why don't you do some work and earn some money instead of doing such a shameful thing by taking advantage of people's sympathy and asking for money and lying? You look like a drunkard. Just look at your eyes. All you need money is to drink, right? So please don't stand here. I'm really, really angry with you. And his face fell and he did not have an answer. He was he felt ashamed. He said, sir, yeah, that's the case. You are right. I was lying. But tell me what happens when you say the truth? You don't get anything. Even when you say the truth, you don't find any means to live. He says, those are just your excuses. Anybody who's idle and lazy like you would say this. I'm sure you would find some work. You're pretty healthy. He said, no, sir, who would give me work? That's when he caught him. Why? Why can't you find work? But tell me, sir, who would give me work? I will. Will you chop wood? Well, he didn't have an answer. He was like, okay, now what do I say? He was actually very lazy and very weak rather to work. And he said, I can chop wood. Okay, come over. And he calls his cook, Olga. He says, Olga, take this gentleman and show him some wood to chop. So Olga is an elderly woman. She's been Skvortsov cook for quite some time, and she takes him, and to have a nice view of what's happening, Skvortsov watches through the dining room window where he sees this very, very interesting sight where this lady takes him out to the yard and throws an axe at his feet and starts swearing. He could see that this woman is scolding him left and right, saying all sorts of things, and this man has hung his head and he's just sitting and listening. And he just retires from there. After a while, Olga comes and tells him that the chopping has been done. So the lawyer is happy. He says, okay, pay him half a ruble. And he pays him and he goes away. From that day onwards, he comes quite often to Skvortsov residence and helps him, with these small chores and earns some small money. After a few days, he decides to move. He moves out of that place to another lodging, and then even for the moving out, he takes this person's help, and he asks him, what's your name, by the way? I never asked your name. So he said, my name is Lashkov. Even then, he looks very weak, and after doing some work also, he is not recovered much. But Skvortsov felt that something has changed in his attitude. He is now more willing to work. So he asks him, are you finding this physical work a little difficult? Would you like to do something more easier? By then he has also sobered down, and his anger has also come down a bit. At least this man is willing to work. So he asks him, can you write? He said, yes, I can. So I have some copying work to do at my friend's office. Would you be willing to take that up? So he says, yeah, fine, sure, I will take it up. And he left Skvortsov, and then he doesn't see him again for another 2 years. After 2 years, at